All right, welcome back to WMAC Now with your host Chuck Stevenson coming at you with a fight review. So we're going to Singapore for one on Prime Video 3. We're going to the one atomweight division, although this did end up becoming a catchweight. We have Lea Bivins making her pro debut, taking on Noelle Grandjean, coming in at 3-0. One was making a big deal out of Bivins' debut, youth amateur background, uh, trained with the Lees, friends with Victoria Lee, and so that whole connection right there. And it looked like this was meant to be a setup fight for Bivins, but well, we'll get to that in a second there. Anyway, let's get into the review itself. So Bivins came out aggressive, striking to the clinch. Some clinch elbows by Bivins from top. Noelle landed a nice hip toss, stood over the supine Bivins, was throwing kicks in the legs. Bivins managed to butt scoot over to Noelle, who chose to enter the guard. And then Noelle landed some ground and pound from up top. Bivins was working her closed guard. For some reason, was working the body triangle from bottom. For whatever reason. Noelle got back to her feet, though, and the referee made Bivins stand. Again, Bivins chose to strike into the clinch. Some knees were landed by both. Although I could tell, Bivins had a huge height advantage, and you could kind of tell that she wasn't used to fighting someone as short as Grandjean. Because it's like she was bent way over, hunched way over in the clinch, and she was having trouble getting those knees up there. But Noelle tried a hip toss again, but Bivins excuse me, managed to stay on her feet, and the two fighters separated. Noelle just started throwing low kicks. I mean, just threw like a crazy amount of low kicks, and you could see that Bivins, in the latter half of the round, was starting to slow down. Not just from the low kicks, but I mean, she just seemed like she was getting tired, like she needed a second wind already. Anyway, Noelle threw a huge, massive right hand straight to the gut of Bivins. And Bivins you could tell she was visibly hurt. She kind of hunched over a little bit, just a little bit, tried to wave it off. Noelle landed a middle kick straight up the center at Bivins' stomach, and then she dropped Bivins with a punch, and as she was closing in for the punch, the referee Herb Dean was on his way in, and as soon as Bivins dropped to the ground, he stopped and waved it off. So your winner, via KO, 4 minutes and 1 second of the first round, Noelle Grandjean. So I'm kind of glad that the details of the fight itself, I could get through them quick, because I really want to talk about what One Championship tried to do here. Okay? One tried to duplicate the Victoria Lee plan with Bivins, and it blew up in their face. And by the Victoria Lee plan, I mean you put her in there against more experienced opponents, but they're like massive underdogs based on size, athleticism, etc. And it just blew up in their face. Like, it worked out for Victoria Lee, but they should have brought in more opponents. Probably should have brought in the same opponents that Victoria Lee faced. But yeah, they gave Bivins an opponent who was more experienced but much smaller. Okay, Bivins is like 5 feet 6 inches, so she's 5.5 feet tall, whereas Grandjean is literally 5 feet even. So massive size advantage there. Although, unlike a lot of Lee's opponents, or all of Lee's opponents, Grandjean, she came in, she's muscular, she's like a muscular 5 foot. So she had some strength behind her and some athleticism. So one tried to do the same thing with Bivins that they did with Lee, and honestly blew up, because here's the thing, they figured this would be a win-win. If Bivins won, she made her debut against a more experienced opponent who already had 3 fights under her belt. That makes her look that much better, just like it did with Victoria Lee. But if Bivins lost, they figured, well, she'd at least have a good showing so that if she lost, giving a good showing, they can say, well, she did well for herself and she'll come back better than ever. Here's the thing. Bivins didn't give a good showing. She honestly didn't. The vast majority of the strikes she threw missed. She kind of looked lost on the ground, like all she knew how to do was close the guard and slow Grandjean down and hope for a stand-up. Like she wasn't working her guard, she wasn't working an open guard, she wasn't looking for sweeps, she wasn't looking for submissions, she was just kind of holding on down there. Back on the feet, again, she looked kind of lost. Like she knew to go forward and just throw strikes, but there wasn't like a plan in place. Listen, clearly Bivins wasn't ready, and Grandjean was too much too soon. One championship needed to do better homework on both of these two, because they should have watched Grandjean's earlier fights, and they should have actually watched Bivins, seen if there was any video to find on Bivins' youth amateur career, because Bivins had no actual adult amateur fights. It was all in youth, like IMMAF, youth events, and like youth pancration, stuff like that. And I'm going to say it right now. Youth, and because I know that there are going to be some one championship fanboys out there that defend everything they do and just simp for every female. Because I already saw it. Because King Casey O'Neill, UFC flyweight on Twitter, said that on her Twitter that, Bivins absolutely did not belong in there, had no experience, and looked completely lost. And there were people defending her, saying, well, she had experience, she had some amateur fights, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll post, her youth IMMAF record. Listen, I'm putting this out there right now. Youth amateur tournaments don't prepare you to fight grown adults. They don't. All a youth tournament does is set you up against someone who's also a kid. You're a kid fighting other kids. That does not prepare you to fight adults. People go into amateurs, like real amateur fights, before they turn pro for a reason. And it's to get that necessary experience, decide if you're good enough and ready to turn pro. Bivins wasn't ready, and they didn't know that because she had no real experience. Like, even if, say, okay, let's go to Korea. Road FC has had a bunch of very young ladies come up through their system, like still in high school, but they're still going through their amateur system, and in their amateur system, they're not all fighting kids. They're fighting adults too. Kids fighting other kids does not prepare you to fight grown adults. That's really all I have to say on that. Congrats to Noelle Grandjean. She got a $50K bonus. And a big question, what does one do with either of these two after this now? We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, things to work on. For Grandjean, I don't really have anything. For Bivins, I'm just going to leave it at this. Guard your midsection. She left her midsection exposed. I mean, absolutely exposed. Now, for fights to make. For Bivins, if she can get amateur fights now that she's already turned pro, if she can get real amateur fights, go get real amateur fights. And not just like IMMAF tournaments. Go out there, contact MMA promotions that do amateur fights and get some amateur experience to find out if you're ready. For Grandjean, let's try this one on for size. Let's see if they'll give her Victoria Lee. See if she can spoil both. I doubt it, though. I think they'll keep Grandjean away from Victoria Lee. But I think that'd be the fight to make. And let's be honest here. Grandjean's 4-0. One championship doesn't have a whole lot of fighters right now still signed with that little experience. If they even keep her around. She spoiled their, debut of their hopeful star. So maybe they won't keep her around. They might be vindictive. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this fight. Noelle Grandjean defeated Lea Bivins via KO first round due to a body punch. Very nice. Let me know your thoughts on the fight in the comments down below. If you liked the video, please give it a like. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe to WMMA Scene Now, the best, most complete women's mixed martial arts dedicated platform on YouTube. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.